Created by Rita Gazard and presented by myself, Mark Garetz. I'm a National Floriani educator. As I always like to do before we get into the software instructions and the construction of the project, I like to show you a finished picture of it so you get an idea of what we're doing. And so as we explain the various pieces of it, it'll make a little more sense. As you can see here on your screen, this is a pillow. It's made out of 4 blocks. They are identical blocks. So we're going to stitch out 4 blocks and sew them together just like you would a small quilt top, except instead of quilting it, we're going to be putting a back on it and a zipper and putting in a pillow form to turn it into a really cool home deck pillow. So it's just one of the many creative things that you can do with the My Decorative Quilter program. So I'm going to go ahead and end that, and I'm going to bring up My Decorative Quilter, and we're going to go ahead and get started with the software portion of tonight's webinar. So the first thing you want to do when you bring up the program, if you haven't done it already, is get a new page to work on here. You do that by clicking this new page, new create a document icon right up here in the left-hand corner. And I've already done that, so your screen should look something like this. We're now going to go through and we're going to set up our screen so that on our workspace so that it all looks the same so you can follow along. First thing we want to do is make sure that we are in inches mode. So look up here in the right-hand corner of your screen, make sure it says inches. If it does not, simply right-click on your top ruler bar there and switch from metric into inches by clicking inches, and it will be in inches mode. The next thing we want to do is come up here to our Tools menu and click General Options. You'll get this pop-up window. Click on the grid icon here and check to make sure that your grid is at 0.25 inches both in the horizontal and the vertical. If it's not, set it to that, 0.25 inches. You want to make sure for the first part that we have Snap to Grid turned on here. And it's probably useful to show the grid style as lines rather than dots, but you can use whatever you feel comfortable with. So make sure those are all set up correctly. Next, we're going to click on the digitizing icon. Make sure our outline input mode is set to Simple Draw. Now, if you haven't changed it since you started the program or since you got the program, this is what it defaults to, so you won't have to change it. If you've changed it, go back into Simple Draw for tonight's application. When you've got those things set, click OK, and now we're going to get started. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to be making an 8-inch quilt block here. We need to have at least an 8-inch viewable area on our screen so we can see where to put things. So to do that, we're going to zoom out. We do that here with our zoom window. You're going to click the down arrow. We're going to select 75%. And it may look a little bit different on your screen, depending on your screen resolution, but the important thing is to make sure that you can see the -4 up here on the top ruler and the +4 over here on the left ruler. So if you can see both of those, you're good. If you can't see those, you may have to zoom out a little more. So we're going to start now by drawing a couple of artwork boxes. And those are boxes that are just going to be lines like guidelines. They won't stitch, but we're going to draw a couple of them to help us position things in our block to make sure they show up in the right place. And that's a really very useful technique to use artwork elements as positioning tools, and you're going to see how that works right now. So this is your artwork tool right over here. You're going to click the down arrow and select the rectangle. When you do that, you'll see that your cursor changes into a crosshair with a little rectangle by it to remind you that you're going to draw a rectangle when you click and drag. So we're going to start up here at 4 and -4. Actually, -4 on the top and +4 on the side. So the intersection of those two is right here. So you want to put the cursor right in this area. It doesn't have to be super close because remember we've got Snap to Grid turned on. So even if you're a little bit off, it's going to snap right to that point. So you're going to click and you're going to drag down to the right until you get to -375 on the left, which is right here, and +375 on the top. So that's right there. Again, you don't have to be perfect. Just somewhere in the ballpark will get you there because it's going to snap to those grid lines. So there's our first artwork box. We're going to create another one. We're just going to go ahead and leave our rectangle tool selected. This one we're going to start at -275 and +275. So we're going to come right here and right there. We're going to click and drag down to the bottom and just line up your other lines. We're going to exactly the same points. So just click and drag and let off your lines. And so those are our first two artwork elements that we're going to add. And this is, again, going to show us where to align things. The next thing we're going to do is start adding our decorations, embellishments, etc. to this. We're going to start with a decor. So we're going to come up here to our decor icon and click it once to open up our flourish menu. We're going to use flourish number 14, which is right here. So go ahead and click that to select it and select OK, and it's going to bring the flourish in. Now, so you can see what's going on tonight a little bit better, I'm going to turn on 3D view, and I'm going to turn that on simply by clicking my 3D icon over here on the left. Now, you do not need to do this at home when you're creating the project. If you want to, you can, but I'm just doing it so it shows up a little bit better on your screens at home and in the video. So we've got our flourish here. We're only going to use the left half of it. We're not going to use the right half of it, so we need to delete part of it. When this comes in, it comes in grouped, and we can tell it's grouped because our group icon is not lit up, meaning there's nothing left to group, but our ungroup icon is lit up, so that means we can ungroup it. So I'm going to go ahead and click that to ungroup that. And so now our design is all split apart. Now we can delete part of it. We're going to do that by clicking off it to get a selection box. And I'm going to start somewhere up in here and click and drag a box over to the right to completely enclose the right-hand element. And when I let off, it's just going to select that. It's going to ignore this over here because I didn't select it all. So it's going to select that part. If that didn't work, try starting the box in a little bit different place. And we're just going to delete this by clicking our scissors icon up here, our cut icon, to delete that part of it. Now we need to work with this whole element again, so we need to reselect it. You can see now it's just selected part of it here because it's no longer grouped. There's a couple different ways you can do that. You can click and drag a box around it, or you can come over here to our sequence view and select color number 9, which is that whole element. So that's what I'm going to do. Click over here, and you can see I've got it reselected. So the very first thing we need to do is we need to flip this horizontally. So we want to reverse it horizontally. We're going to use our flip horizontal icon up here on the top row to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and you can see that the design now flipped horizontally. And we need to make it bigger to fit our design. So we're going to come over here to our Properties box, click our Transform icon, and we want to make sure that Maintain Aspect Ratio is checked before we do anything. Mine's already checked, so make sure that's checked. We're going to come up here to our width. We're going to backspace over it, and we're going to type in 5.75 inches. So we're going to change it to 5.75 inches wide. You notice that the height is automatically going to scale with it because we've got Maintain Aspect Ratio checked. We're going to click Apply to lock that transformation in. And now all we need to do is move it into position. We're going to use these artwork boxes to move it into position. So I'm going to hover over the design. You see when I do that, my cursor changes into a little hand saying I can move it. So I'm going to click and drag, and I'm going to line the right edge up with the right edge of the box and the top up with this top of the inner box. So right about there, and I'm going to let off the mouse, excuse me, and now it's in position. So we're going to do another one down here, kind of flipped over and mirrored. So we're just going to make a copy of this to use that one. So we're going to come up here and we're going to click Copy, and then we're going to click Paste. That puts another one right over the top of it. That's already selected. So we are going to rotate it right 2 times. We're going to use our Rotate Right icon. So we're going to click it once and click it twice to rotate it. And we're also going to flip it horizontal. So we're going to come up here and click our Flip Horizontal icon. And then with it still selected, we're going to drag it into place using the bottom of the box and the left edge of our inner box to line it up right there. And now we've got both elements in perfect position. So that's the first part of the design. We're now going to add an embellishment in here, and we're going to do that with our embellishments. It's this icon right here, which looks like a little present. So we're going to click that one. We are going to use one of the elegant embellishment styles. It's right here. We're going to have to open this little box up because there's a lot of different elegant styles. So we're going to do that by clicking on the little plus icon here to expand the elegant. We're going to click on Elegant 03. We're going to use the triangle element. It's called Embellishment 09_try. So we're going to click that one. We're going to click OK. That's going to bring it into our design. Now what we need to do is we need to both resize this and do some flipping of this one. So again, we're going to come over here to our Properties box, click our Transform button. This time we're going to change it to 5.5. Now this is symmetrical, but make sure maintain aspect ratio still checked. We're going to come in here, we're going to type in 5.5. You can see it both changes to 5.5. Click Apply, and then we're going to flip this both horizontal and vertical to turn it over. So we're going to click Flip Horizontal and Flip Vertical, and then we're going to just put our cursor over the top to where it's a hand, and click and drag that into position. And this one's going to line itself up to the lower right-hand corner, so we're going to drag it right there, let off the mouse, and there's our embellishment. We're going to add one more element to this design to go right in here. We're going to go back to our decors to do that. So we're going to click our decor icon one more time. This time we're going to use flourish number, I've lost it, flourish number 28. That's right. So we're going to come down here to flourish number 28. It's right here. We're going to click that guy. We're going to click OK. It's going to bring it in here into the middle of the design. The very first thing we're going to do is click and drag it up out of the way so we can work on it up here in a clear spot. So click and just drag it up here. Now, as we did with this other flourish, we're actually going to only use the center part of this. So we need to delete the part over here and the part on the left. So to do that, again, we need to ungroup it. So we're going to click our ungroup icon. Going to click off it to get a selection box so nothing is selected. I'm going to undo the right one or delete the right one first. So I'm going to come up here to the right of this, somewhere right in here, click and drag a box around it, just like that. And when I have that selected, I'm going to come up to my cut icon and click that. I'm going to do the same thing with the left side, but starting on the other side. So I'm going to click around and select that element. I'm going to cut that one out. And then we need to select this, what's remaining. Now this can be a little hard to do because we don't have a lot of screen real estate and you tend to select this artwork. The easiest way to do it is to come over here to your sequence view. This flourish is right here. It's all color number 11. So simply click the first item for top level of color number 11 and we will have selected it. So what we need to do now is we're going to rotate this so it fits in here. We're going to rotate it 45 degrees to the left. So we're going to do that by clicking our Rotate Left icon once. We're going to resize this one as well. So we're going to come over to our Properties box here. We're going to resize this one to 2.25 inches. So I'm going to type in 2.25. Again, maintain aspect ratios checked. And they both change. Click Apply. And then we're going to simply drag this into position. So I'm going to come and drag it down here. And you want the point, the bottom point of that to kind of go right in there. Don't make it touch, just get real close and let off the mouse and it will be in position. Okay, so go ahead and leave that guy selected. Don't unselect it yet because we need to do something with this. In the process of resizing these flourishes, we've actually created some satin stitches that are too wide to actually stitch out as a satin stitch. So we're going to convert them into fill stitches instead so that they will stitch out and not create too much thread or just refuse to stitch out on certain machines. So we're going to do that by changing the elements, the satin elements, into a fill stitch. And you're going to do that by clicking, and my little control here is in the way. So give me 1 second to move it out of the way if I can. You guys can't see what I'm doing, but there we go. I needed to move something down so I could find this arrow. It's one of the presenter controls. I apologize for that. So what we're going to do is we're going to find in our properties box here the pattern type. It's right now satin. You're going to click the down arrow, and we're going to select the corn pattern and then click apply. And if I click off it, since it's in 3D mode, you can see that it applied a nice pattern to it here. The other two elements that now have satin stitches that are too big is this one here and this one here. Easiest way to select all of those is with our sequence view. You want to scroll your sequence view up so you can see sequence number 6 and sequence number 14 on the screen at the same time. So I'm going to click on sequence number 6 and then holding down the control button. I apologize, you can't see my hand on the keyboard, but I'm holding down control and clicking number 14. So now you can see over here I've selected both of those at the same time, and I am going to change those from a satin into pattern number 2 and click apply. And when I click off it, so you can see that gives us kind of a nice split satin effect look here because that's what pattern number 2 does to that. Okay, and so that's all that we need to do to fix our stitches. So our block is basically done here. We just have a few more things we need to do to get this ready to stitch out. One thing we need is we need a basting stitch to go all the way around our design to baste our fabric when we get there to our stabilizer that's going to be in the hoop. And so we could draw another box, but we already have this box here, which will make a nice basting stitch. So we're going to come over to our sequence view, and we're going to select the very first artwork that we created since we don't need it for anything else right now. We're going to select that. We're going to convert this into a basting stitch by coming up here to our run icon, our convert to run, not the regular run, but the convert to run icon. It's this one down here. Simply click that once to convert to a run stitch and come over here to our properties box. We can see that the stitch length on this is 3 millimeters, which is too tight to be a basting stitch. So we're just going to simply backspace over it, select 5 millimeters, and click apply, and that'll make a nice basting stitch. Now the last thing we want to do with this design is optional. So you can either do this or not. Right now we've got 4 thread colors. We've got our basting stitch in one color, we've got these flourishes in one, these flourishes in another, and our decor in another. So we can leave them all separate colors. If you want to stitch them out separate colors, that's perfectly fine. But in our example, in the pillow that we showed you, we're going to use all one color. So we want to use this color out here. That happens to be color number 9 down here in our color palette. And we need to select all of these. I'm going to leave the basting stitch another color. Now I could click and drag a box around all these elements, but another way to do it is, again, using the sequence view. So to see them all, I'm going to come up here to all items, and I'm going to right-click on all items. And I'm going to come up here to a menu option called Collapse All. And what this does is it takes away all the detail and just lets me see this top level. So our stitches are, the first one's the basting stitch. This one here, color number 9, color 10, and color 11. Color 1 is an outline that we're not using around that embellishment in the middle there, so we're going to ignore that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on color number 9. I'm going to click on, hold down Control, and click on color 10, and keeping Control held down, click on color number 11. And you can see I've selected all the elements we want to change. I'm going to come over here to my color palette of thread. I'm going to right-click on color number 9. And now I've changed all of them. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Hold on, let me go back into my center here. And if you didn't see what I just did, I double-clicked on the zoom icon. That's a really cool shortcut to bring everything back onto the screen. And I'm going to click off it so you can see the beautiful color and how this is going to stitch out. And that's all you need to do for this project in the software. Very, very simple, very straightforward. The last thing we need to do, however, is we need to save this file. You want to come up here to File and click Save As. And you want to save it first as a C2S file. So you can see I've already got one saved in here, Home Deck Pillow, and if you downloaded this project, you're also going to have this in here. So you can click this and save right over the top, or if you want, you can change the name. So let me just change it to My Home Deck Pillow. So I've got both there, and I'm going to click Save, and it is giving me this message, and it shouldn't. Hold on a second. It didn't like that. Okay, so I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to click Save File, Save As one more time, and I'm just going to type in My Home Deck Pillow. That's a little idiosyncrasy of the problem. If you select this, it doesn't let you change the name even though it looks like it's going to. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save, and that will save it. Now, in order to stitch this out, however, you're going to need to save it as a stitch file for your machine. So I'm going to come back to File, click Save As one more time, and this time I'm going to use the down arrow in my type, and I'm going to change it to a specific type. So, for example, if I had a Baby Lock Brother machine, I'd save it in PES version 9. So I do that and click Save, and now I will have a machine file that I can stitch out. So that completes the software lesson. Let's go on back to our PowerPoint so we can look at how to stitch this out, and also how to, oops, I didn't want to do that. I clicked the wrong thing. Hold on. This one was what I wanted. So we can see how to stitch this out and how to put the project together. So I'm going to go through these two slides real quick here. Again, you've seen what it looks like before. So I'm going to go ahead and click on to our next slide, which is the materials that we require for this particular project. So the first thing you're going to need is some Floriani Dreamweave. We sell this in two different weights. We sell a regular weight and an ultra heavy weight. You can use either for this project. It really doesn't matter. And what we're going to be using that Dreamweave for is to stabilize the fabric that we're going to use. Not the stitches. It's not an embroidery stabilizer. It's a fabric stabilizer as we're using it in this project. You're also going to need some Floriani Nylon No-Show Mesh Stabilizer. There's our stitch stabilizer. You can do it in any color you want because it's not going to show. So any color you have will work. And you probably want to use the non-fusible version for this particular project. You're going to need 2/3 of a yard of silk dupioni for the pillow front and back. You're going to need a 16-inch pillow form for the center, an 18-inch zipper, some Floriani embroidery thread for the top. You're going to pick a thread color that goes with your fabric, obviously, one that matches or one that doesn't, up to you. Bobbin thread, standard white bobbin thread's fine because it's going to be on the back, and 8x8 minimum hoop or 200 by 200 minimum hoop size, 200 millimeter by 200 millimeter. Is what we're going to need for this project. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to prepare our fabric. You need to cut one 20-inch square section from the silk and from the Dreamweave. So you're going to cut a 20-inch square section from both of them. You're going to put the fusible side of the Dreamweave to the back of the silk and fuse them together. Again, the Dreamweave is stabilizing the silk and keeps it from running as we stitch on it. It is not a embroidery stabilizer. It's not a stitch stabilizer. It is a fabric stabilizer in this particular application. You're going to cut the fused piece into quarters to form 4 10-inch squares. We're going to repeat that process basically one more time, but this time we're going to cut an 18-inch square section from the silk and the Dreamweave, fuse them together like before, but this time we're going to cut it into just 2 sections. So just cut it into half to form 2 9 by 18-inch sections, and that's going to become the back of our pillow. So we're going to get ready to embroider now. First thing to do is hoop up the nylon no-show mesh, get it nice and tight in the hoop. You're going to hoop that all by itself. And then right on top of the hoop, you're going to center a 10-inch piece of fused silk on the hoop. So again, this is the 10-inch piece that we cut out. You want to pay attention to the grain as you're putting this down. Make sure you take note of which way the grain is running. So in this example, let's say, for example, you're going to run the grain left to right as you're looking at it in the hoop here. All right. So you want to attach the hoop to your machine, load the design into the machine, and stitch out the first color, which will base the silk to the stabilizer. And then you can go ahead and stitch out the rest of the design. In our example, it's all one color, so it's going to all stitch out together, and you won't have to change any thread. Once it is stitched out, you're going to repeat that step to stitch out a total of 4 blocks. But what's really important to remember is that silk has a distinctive grain. You're going to stitch out the first 2 blocks with the grain running the same direction. So in our example, it's going to be left to right. For the remaining 2 blocks, you want to rotate that fabric 90 degrees so that the grain runs perpendicular to the first 2 pieces. So again, in our example, the last 2 you'd be stitching out, the grain would be running up and down. This is really important because when we put the blocks together, this will keep the grain running the same direction across the whole pillow top. If you don't pay attention to this, your grain's going to run various directions. Your pillow's going to look kind of wonky. All right. Once you've stitched out all 4 blocks, you want to trim each block 1/2 inch past the basting stitch lines to create our seam allowance and remove the basting stitches. Now, if you want, you can trim the stabilizer away from the back, or you can just leave it in place. I'd prefer you just leave it in place. There's no real reason to trim it. It's very, very light. No one will ever feel that it's there. So why take an extra step when you don't need to? Once you've got that done, we're going to put our first 2 blocks together. So you want to line them up, and you want to make sure that they're oriented correctly. Take a look at the picture as to how they're oriented. They're going to be a mirror image of each other, and you're going to be making sure also that the grain runs the same direction across these 2 blocks. And a hint here is it's not going to be the first 2 that you sewed out. It's going to be the first and third or the second and fourth, because you're going to want to rotate one of those blocks 90 degrees to get it to line up like it shows here in the picture. So you're going to have to use the blocks where the grain lines up. So once you get the designs positioned and the grain's running the same direction, you want to flip the right block right side down, and you want to draw a line 1/16 of an inch away from the stitching as it's shown on the picture here. So you want to draw it on the correct side as it's shown in the picture here. Then you want to stick a pin in the 3 points that we've located for you here on the diagram. So these are locator points so you can line up the design with the second block. Okay, so you're going to stick it straight through, not flat like you see it here in the picture. That's the final step. But you're going to stick it straight through, and then once you have the 3 pins in, find the same points on the right side of the second block and insert the pin through there. Once they're all matched up and lined up, then you can flip the pin on its side and pin the blocks together to hold them in place. So that's a kind of cool technique for lining up the blocks and holding them in place. You're going to take it over to your sewing machine, and using the line as a guide, you're going to stitch the 2 blocks together just like you would a quilt top. And then you're going to press the seam open. You're going to repeat these steps for the remaining 2 blocks. Again, you want to make sure that you check the design direction and the grain direction, and when you're done, you should have 2 sections that look identical. We're going to now align those 2 sections just like we did before. We're going to flip one section right side down, draw another line 1/16 of an inch away from the stitching just like we did. We're going to stick some more pins in just like we did before, except now we're going to do 6 points instead of 3. With the right sides together, you're going to match up the same points just like we did before. When they're lined up, you're going to pin the sections together again just like we did before. And one more time, just like we did before, using the new line as a guide, stitch the 2 sections together, press the seam open, and then you want to trim your completed block into a 16-inch square with the design centered in the trimming. So you want to make sure that you trim it and keep that design centered. We're going to construct the back now. So you want to take one of your 9 by 18-inch fused silk sections, put it on the zipper, the right sides together. You're going to put it on the far side of the zipper with the zipper facing up like you see here in the picture. Line the edge of the fabric up to the edge of the zipper tape, pin it in place. With the presser foot up against the zipper cable, stitch the fabric to the zipper, as you can see we're showing you here in the second picture. You're going to then fold the fabric over to the right, aligning the fold to the zipper cable. So that's very important. You don't want to fold it over to your seam. you want to fold it, aligning that fold right up to the zipper cable. So what we're creating here is kind of a hidden zipper seam here. So once you've got it positioned, you can pin it if you desire. You could even iron it if you want to hold it in place. And then you're going to come along and you're going to top stitch that fabric to the zipper. And then you want to repeat that step for the second half. So you're going to do it to the other half of the zipper. And you're going to trim your back to a 16-inch square. And if you want, you can trim your zipper at this time or not. But if you trim your zipper, make sure you can see right here, you've got the opening of the zipper. Make sure you move it in. Don't trim this part off, because then you won't be able to use your zipper anymore. So make sure you zip it, unzip it in a little bit before you trim. All right, and then what you want to do is put the right sides of the two sections that we created together. So this is going to be our quilt top and our back. So you're going to put those together. You're going to align them. You're going to open the zipper up at least halfway and pin them together. You want to stitch them together using a 1/2-inch seam allowance in from the edge. And just be careful when you stitch over the zipper, and you want to stitch over the zipper 3 times to lock it in place. And all that remains is to go ahead and trim the corners off so that when we turn it inside out, we have nice corners. So just make sure you don't trim through your stitching. Just right up as close to it as you can. Turn it right side out. Zip it open all the way. Insert the pillow form. Zip it back up, and enjoy your home deck pillow project. And so we want to thank everybody for attending tonight. We hope that you will use the video that you've downloaded along with the print PDF instructions to recreate this project at home. And we hope you'll have fun with this project. I think it turned out looking great. And we'll see you next time for another exciting decorative quilter project.